You need to go to Sunday school and learn about Jesus and the Bible, the depths of the scriptures. You need to be reading the scriptures on your own. We have some seminary students in here today. Seminary students, we need to learn more about the scriptures, but you don't need to worship the knowledge of the scriptures. You need to worship the God who's explained in the scriptures. I want you to look at verse 9 of Colossians 1. It says, "So from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding." There is an emphasis given here of specificity in our prayers. I want to encourage you to be very specific in your conversations with God. Don't just pray generically, but pray very intentionally and very specifically about things and for things. The object of this prayer that we can see from verse 9 was that God might do something very special. I do not cease to pray for you. That does not mean that Paul was, this is something I pictured, I think, when I was a child in the faith. I kind of pictured, I don't cease to pray for you, as he just prayed all the time. He was constantly praying. What that's really meaning is that Paul was every moment in a habit of praying for them. Invariably, this gets down to, and I'm just going to be super practical about your prayer life. If you're sitting at a red light, how many of you get really frustrated when you're sitting at a red light and the moron in front of you is just staring at Facebook on their phone instead of going? How many of you have ever been that moron sitting in that seat? All right, we're going to be honest in church today. No, when you're sitting at the red light, instead of reaching for your phone, which you shouldn't be doing, instead of fiddling with the radio. Kids, we used to listen to the radio back in the day. I know it's playlists and all that stuff now, but instead of doing all that, I encourage you to take red lights and pray at them. Just super practically. That's a great place to pray. You're sitting there, you're stuck, you're having to keep your focus on something. You might as well keep your focus on the Lord. And it's so, by the way, when you're praying at a red light, keep your eyes open though, all right? The rest of verse 9 says, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. The word filled means filled to completeness. Paul wanted them to be filled to the brim with the knowledge of God's will. And the basic purpose of our prayer ought always to be that we might discover and experience the will of God in our lives. I want you to notice the knowledge of his will. Now, there are many words in the original. By the way, just as a reminder, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. The New Testament was written in Greek. There's a little sliver of the book of Daniel that was written in Aramaic, but for the most part, Hebrew and Greek, right? In the Greek language in the New Testament, there are many words for the word knowledge. The most common is the word gnosis. And I know in English, we often will leave the G silent on if it's the beginning of a GN or something like that, but we pronounce it gnosis. But often we refer to that as Gnosticism in the English. So the false teachers at that time in the first century were really struggling with a false teaching called Gnosticism. All right? So I'm going to say that again. First century teaching was struggling with Gnosticism. Gnosticism is a term taken from the word gnosis, meaning knowledge, which reveals their claim to have a superior knowledge. Basically, Gnosticism, I'll give it in a modern day twist on things. Did you know that the founder of Wikipedia came out as a Christian this past week? That's pretty cool, right? Now, I remember hearing this story years ago about how Wikipedia was founded, where they were founded with the goal of compiling all of human knowledge onto one website in order to become smarter, and Gnostics would look at it to become more godlike. The more that you know, the more you are close to becoming your own God, basically. That's what Gnosticism was teaching. It was prevalent in the first century. It's popped up a little bit in the 21st century as artificial intelligence. For example, I'm going to go down this rabbit trail, okay? So there's this author that I'm kind of weirdly obsessed with named Ray Kurzweil. He's an atheist. Ray Kurzweil used to be a professor at MIT. Now he's an executive at Google. And Ray Kurzweil, this is what he wants to do. And he wrote a book called The Singularity Effect, which almost feels like a sci-fi book, but it's written as a MIT professor, scientist. And this is what he was basically teaching. His belief system is that, are you with me, by the way? I hope I'm not boring you with some weird story, because I was not planning on telling the story at all. But it ties in with Gnosticism from Colossians 1:9. So his belief system, Ray Kurzweil, is the belief that humanity is defined by our brain. Okay? We as Christians believe that humanity, we believe in the Imago Dei, the image of God. We believe that we are created in the image of God. Okay? So, if we're created in the image of God, we believe that it's not the brain that makes us human, it's the soul that makes us a human being, right? You with me? Okay. So, if you believe that, then you disagree with Ray Kurzweil already. But Ray Kurzweil he has a goal of uploading his brain into a cloud, not a literal like cumulus nimbus or something, but into a digital cloud like iCloud or I don't know what. I don't know if he's a Dropbox guy. I don't know, but uploading his brain into a cloud, and then he can live forever because his brain defines who he is as a human being. Crazy, right? Does anybody else agree that that's kind of crazy? Okay. That's modern day Gnosticism. That's all that is. Where the more and more knowledge that you gain, the more quickly you become a god. And so he believes that you can live forever because your brain would be uploaded into a cloud. They've done scientists around Ireland or Scotland, somewhere over there, on sheep and their brains and computers and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I say all that to say, the prayer from Colossians 1:9, just listen to this again. From the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding. Now, that word knowledge, gnosko, here in Colossians 1:9, it's epignosis. Not just gnosis, but epignosis. That the preposition epi is upon or above. So it's added to that word to make it where it's knowledge that is upon or above something. One cannot have a false full knowledge. We can have a false gnosis, but not a false epignosis. Now, if I just went over your head, let me explain that for a second. Paul wanted the church of Colossae to understand perfectly and completely and to know the will of God. And he prayed specifically that God will give them a complete knowledge of his will. Here's the deal. You need to have a knowledge of God, but not worship knowledge about God. Does that make sense? What that means is you need to go to Sunday school and learn about Jesus and the Bible, the depths of the Scriptures. You need to be reading the Scriptures on your own. We have some seminary students in here today. Seminary students, we need to learn more about the Scriptures, but you don't need to worship the knowledge of the Scriptures. You need to worship the God who's explained in the Scriptures.